The casseroles arrived in waves, each one a monument to other people's discomfort. They lined my mother's dining room table like edible condolences. Tuna noodle, chicken divan, something with cream of mushroom soup that had already started sweating in its Pyrex. I stood beside them holding a glass of white wine I'd poured 20 minutes ago and hadn't sipped once, watching my reflection warp in the silver coffee urn. Across the room, cousins I hadn't seen since someone's wedding in 2015 huddled by the piano, glancing at me with the kind of concern usually reserved for people teetering on ledges. Aunt Diane found me first. She always did. She materialized beside the credenza in a black dress that probably cost more than my rent, smelling like Chanel and judgment, her hand landing on my forearm with practiced sympathy. "Nora, sweetheart," she said, her voice pitched low and therapeutic. "You seem—" She paused, eyebrow arching like a drawbridge. "Light." I looked at her, really looked. Took in the perfectly styled silver bob, the pearl earrings, the way her mouth was already pursing in preparation for whatever I might say next. Something in me, something that had been holding its breath for 34 years, finally exhaled. "I'm smiling," I said, "because I'm finally free." The words landed in the space between us like a wine glass hitting tile. Diane's face did something extraordinary, froze mid-expression, then rearranged itself into polite horror, the social equivalent of a system reboot. Her hand dropped from my arm. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. You... She blinked twice. Grief affects people differently. "Sure," I said. "That must be it." She retreated toward the living room with the jerky movements of someone who just realized they were standing too close to something volatile. I watched her whisper to Uncle Rick, watched his head swivel toward me, watched the information spread through the room like spilled water, let it spread. I took my first sip of wine. It was warm and tasted like freedom anyway. My gaze snagged on the mantel where 47 ceramic bluebirds perched in compulsive rows. 47? I'd counted them once when I was 14, during one of my mother's silent treatments, desperate for something to do with my hands and eyes that wasn't trying to read her face for signs of thaw. She'd collected them obsessively, flea markets, estate sales, online auctions, each one identical, blue glaze, wings folded, heads cocked at the same angle, a murder of frozen birds, a parliament of stillness. I remembered breaking one when I was 8. I'd been dusting like she'd taught me, careful, methodical, using the yellow cloth in small circles when my elbow caught the edge. The bluebird tumbled, seemed to hang in the air for a moment like it might actually fly, then shattered against the hardwood in a spray of ceramic shrapnel. My mother didn't yell. That would have been easier. She just stopped speaking to me for 3 days. 3 days of preparing my own cereal, eating dinner in silence while she read the newspaper, asking questions that evaporated unanswered into the air between us. I learned then that fear has a sound. It's the absence of everything else. "Nora." Martin appeared at my elbow, my half-sister's husband holding a plate of finger sandwiches he clearly had no intention of eating. He had that look, the one people get when they've been deputized to check on you, all soft eyes and tilted head. "You holding up okay?" The viewing line had been like this for 2 hours, an assembly line of sympathy, mourners rotating through with their practiced condolences, telling me how devoted my mother was, how she'd sacrificed everything for her only child. I'd nodded until my neck hurt, accepted damp tissues pressed into my palm like communion wafers, let women I barely remembered from church hold me while they cried into my shoulder about a woman they'd seen maybe twice a year. Devoted. That word kept surfacing. I turned it over in my mind like a stone looking for the catch. Devoted to what, exactly? To the appearance of motherhood? To the performance of sacrifice? Devoted the way a prison guard is devoted to their shift? "I'm exactly where I need to be," I told Martin. He blinked, looked at his sandwich plate like it might offer guidance. "Well, if you need anything at all." He backed away slowly, like I might spook. I escaped to the bathroom, needing 4 walls and a locked door. The hallway was lined with framed photos. My mother's greatest hits, the visual autobiography she'd curated for public consumption. I paused at the one from 1998. I was 10, wearing a velvet dress I'd hated, my mother's arm around my shoulders. Her grip was tight enough that you could see the fabric bunching under her fingers, the way my whole body angled slightly toward her like a plant growing toward the only available light. My smile in the photo didn't reach my eyes. I'd never noticed that before, or maybe I had and just filed it away, with all the other observations I wasn't allowed to make out loud. When I came back, the room had shifted. Conversations still burbled along in their tributaries of small talk, but there was a new current underneath. People's eyes touched me and skated away. The Hendersons, who'd been effusive earlier, suddenly had somewhere else to be. Claire stood by the window with a cluster of her friends from high school, the ones who'd always treated my mother like a second mom, and she was watching me with red-rimmed eyes that held something sharper than grief. I felt it then, the verdict coming in. The room was deciding I was the problem, that my smile was evidence of something broken in me, not something broken that had finally healed. I picked up an abandoned glass, carried it to the kitchen, and started collecting the debris of other people's mourning. By 7 o'clock, the house had emptied to its bones. Guests trickled out in clusters, air kissing my cheeks and promising to check in soon, with voices that suggested they absolutely would not. I moved through the rooms, collecting abandoned plates, finding lipstick stains on my mother's crystal glasses, the ones she'd only brought out for company, the ones I wasn't allowed to touch growing up in case I broke something irreplaceable. The house still smelled like her. White Diamond's perfume, that cloying floral musk she'd worn every day since 1987, layered into the curtains and upholstery like geological strata. I'd bought her other perfumes over the years, birthdays, Christmases, light, fresh scents I thought she might like. She thanked me politely and never opened them. White Diamonds was who she was, persistent, unchanging, hard to wash out. Claire was still here. My half-sister lingered by the kitchen island, folding and refolding a cloth napkin, building towards something. She was 5 years younger than me, Dad's daughter from his second marriage, the one that lasted. We'd done the blended family dance growing up, awkward weekend visits, forced birthday parties, the performance of sisterhood without any of the infrastructure. After Dad left both our mothers, we'd found a kind of solidarity in abandonment, but my mother had been good to her, had sent cards on her birthday, had her over for holidays. Claire got the version of my mother that other people saw, the warm one, the generous one, the one who baked and laughed and didn't wield silence like a scalpel. How can you just... Claire started, then stopped, refolded the napkin. How can you stand there like nothing happened? I rinsed a plate under water that was too hot, watching steam curl up. I'm standing here because something happened, finally. That's... Her voice cracked. She's dead, Nora. Our mother is dead. Your mother, I said quietly. Then, because that sounded harsher than I meant, she was different with you. Claire's face did something complicated. She loved you. She talked about you constantly. She was so proud. Of what? I turned off the water. What was she proud of? That I made it out despite her? That I survived? Jesus, Nora. Claire pressed her fingers to her temples. I know you two had issues, but she did her best. After Dad left, she was alone. She was scared. She told my college boyfriend I'd had an abortion. The words came out flat, factual. Freshman year, Ryan, nice guy. Pre-med. We'd been dating 3 months when he stopped returning my calls. Took me 2 weeks to find out why. She'd called him, told him I'd terminated a pregnancy and was too emotionally fragile to discuss it. He was Catholic. He was gone by the end of the day. Claire's face went the color of skim milk. That's not... You don't... I was a virgin, Claire. I was 19 and terrified of disappointing her, and I'd never even... I dried my hands on a towel embroidered with my mother's initials. Forced, my voice level. But sure, she did her best. Silence pulled between us, broken only by the kitchen clock ticking off seconds like a countdown. Claire shook her head slowly, mouth working around words that wouldn't come. Finally, you don't know how hard it was for her. After Dad left. The bills, the house, trying to keep everything together for you. There it was. The erasure, happening in real time. My reality spackled over with someone else's narrative, the gaps filled in with noble suffering and maternal sacrifice. I'd seen it before, lived it. The way my mother could rewrite history even as it was happening, casting herself as the abandoned hero, alone and brave, doing everything for her child. And people believed it. Why wouldn't they? She was small and sad and convincing. The will appointment's tomorrow, Claire said, her voice careful now, rebuilding the wall between us brick by brick. 10 a.m., Brennan's office. I nodded. Caught the subtext underneath, you don't deserve anything. Maybe I didn't. Maybe that was the point. I'm not expecting much. I think she wanted to be fair. To both of us? I almost laughed. Fair. I remembered being 19, acceptance letter to Northwestern in my hand, journalism scholarship that covered half tuition, sitting at the same kitchen table across from my mother. Her face had been soft with tears, voice trembling as she explained that the college fund, the one she'd shown me statements for since I was 12, the one that was supposed to make everything possible, had been reallocated. The house was underwater after the divorce. She'd needed to keep the roof over our heads. Surely I understood. Surely I didn't blame her for doing what she had to do to survive. She cried, made it about her fear, her sacrifice, her impossible choices, and I'd comforted her, had told her it was okay, had taken out loans and worked 3 jobs, campus bookstore, weekend catering, overnight gas station shifts, and stretched a 4-year degree into 8 years of night classes and exhaustion. Had graduated at 27 with $40,000 in debt and my mother in the audience, beaming, telling everyone how proud she was of her daughter who'd worked so hard, who'd been so determined. Claire was still talking, something about the house and estate taxes and Mom's wishes, but I'd stopped listening. I pulled out my phone, saw a text from Sam waiting. "How you holding up? Need me to come?" "I should go," Claire said, gathering her purse, her coat. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Don't be late." "I won't." She paused at the door, hand on the knob, looking back at me with something that might have been concern or might have been fear. "Nora, whatever you're feeling, it's okay to grieve." "I know," I said. And I did. Just not the way she meant. After she left, I climbed the stairs to my childhood bedroom. My mother had kept it preserved, her word. What that meant was she'd erased every trace of who I actually was, and replaced it with a staged memory in Laura Ashley prints and carefully arranged teddy bears I'd never played with. The posters I'd hung were gone. The books I'd loved disappeared. Even the shoebox of letters from my best friend Emma, who'd moved to Portland sophomore year, vanished. The room was a museum exhibit, childhood generic edition, clean, acceptable, someone else's. I sat on the bed. The mattress springs creaked in the same spot they'd creaked when I was 16 and sneaking in past curfew. Some things don't change. Some things fossilize. My phone buzzed again. Sam. "I'm here if you need me. Anytime." "I mean it." I typed back. "I'm okay. I think I'm actually okay." Stared at the words, deleted them. Tried again. "Tomorrow's the will. Then I'm done." Sent it before I could reconsider. Lay back on the bed and looked at the ceiling, at the water stain shaped like a dog that had been there since I was 12. Thought about all the nights I'd stared at that stain, making up stories about where the dog was running to, away. The dog was always running away. Brennan's office smelled like mint and old paper and the particular silence of rooms where bad news gets delivered with sympathy. The lawyer was maybe 60, with the kind of soft hands that had never changed a tire, and he arranged documents on his desk with the careful slowness of someone who'd done this 1,000 times and knew exactly how each scene would play. Claire sat beside me in one of those leather chairs that exhales when you sit down. She'd dressed for the occasion, black suit, pearl earrings, tasteful grief. I'd worn jeans and the sweater Sam had given me for Christmas. Brennan's eyes had flickered over my outfit when I walked in, some quick calculation happening behind his professional smile. "Thank you both for coming," he said, sliding reading glasses onto his nose. "I know this is difficult. Your mother was very specific in her wishes." Very specific. I almost smiled. My mother had been specific about everything. How to load a dishwasher, which groceries went on, which shelves, the correct way to fold towels so the edges aligned. Specific was her love language. Control dressed up as care. Brennan opened the folder, cleared his throat. The estate is relatively straightforward. The house at 4127 Maple Street, valued at approximately $320,000, goes to Claire Elizabeth Morrison. Claire's shoulders dropped half an inch, relief or maybe vindication. The savings and checking accounts totaling $41,000, also to Claire. The china, jewelry, and personal effects, again, Claire. I watched him read, his voice a drone, each item another brick in the wall my mother had built between us even in death. It should have hurt. Maybe it would later. Right now, it just felt inevitable, like watching a movie I'd already seen. "And to Nora Catherine Reeves." Brennan paused, looked up at me over his glasses. "A single item? The Cedar Hope chest currently stored in the attic of the residence on Maple Street. Claire turned to stare at me. I felt her gaze like heat. She blinked. That's it? Just the chest? According to the will, yes. Brennan's voice had gone softer, which somehow made it worse. Pity. He was using his pity voice. The cedar chest. I hadn't thought about it in years, but it surfaced now fully formed. Sitting in the attic corner, brass latch tarnished, carved panels dusty. I'd asked about it once when I was 12, curious about what was inside. My mother's face had gone sharp. Private things, she'd said. Not for you. The chest became a symbol after that. Every locked door, every clipped conversation, every question that died unanswered in the air between us. I can help you clean out the house, Claire said, her voice brightening now that the stakes were settled, now that she'd won whatever competition we'd been having without my participation. If you want, we could sort through Mom's things together and... I just need the chest, I said. You can have the rest. Brennan walked us through the paperwork, signatures, tax implications, timelines. I signed where he indicated, my hand steady. Claire kept glancing at me sideways like I might suddenly combust or start demanding my fair share. But I didn't want the house. Didn't want the dishes we'd eaten off while my mother critiqued my table manners. Didn't want the jewelry she'd worn while explaining why my outfit wasn't appropriate for dinner. I wanted the one thing she'd thought to give me. The locked box, the mystery, the thing she'd kept from me even now. We drove separately to the house. Claire had movers coming at 2 to start boxing up the valuable stuff. The furniture, the art, the collections. I told her I'd be quick, just needed to grab the chest and go. The attic stairs pulled down with a screech of springs that probably hadn't been oiled since the 90s. Heat hit me first, thick and dusty and still. Then the smell, mothballs and cardboard and time. A single bulb hung from the center beam, casting everything in sepia. The chest sat exactly where I remembered, tucked under the eave beside a stack of plastic bins labeled Christmas in my mother's sharp handwriting. Cedar panels, brass latch, smaller than I'd built it up to be in my memory. I knelt beside it, ran my fingers over the carved lid, felt the weight of 34 years of wondering. Downstairs I heard Claire directing the movers, her voice bright and efficient. Careful with that lamp. Yes, all the china. The bedroom furniture, too. I lifted the chest. It was lighter than I expected. Whatever was inside wasn't heavy, wasn't the family silver or gold bars or any of the dramatic treasures I'd imagined as a kid. I carried it down the ladder one-handed, careful on the rungs. Claire appeared in the hallway. That's it? You're sure? I'm sure. Nora. She touched my arm and her hand was warm, real. If you need anything. I know. I shifted the chest in my grip. Thank you. I drove home with the chest buckled into the passenger seat like a person. Caught myself glancing at it at red lights, this wooden box that held whatever truth my mother thought I deserved. Or maybe whatever truth she couldn't face. Hard to tell the difference with her. Sam was waiting when I got home, sitting on our apartment steps with 2 cups of coffee that had probably gone cold. They stood when they saw me, took in my face, the chest, the whole situation, and just opened their arms. I walked into the hug and let them hold me for a minute, breathing in the smell of their shampoo and the detergent we used, and the particular comfort of being known. That it? They asked, nodding at the chest. That's it, my whole inheritance, one locked box. Very Gothic, right? I almost laughed. Very Jane Eyre. We carried it upstairs together. I set it on the living room floor, and we both stared at it like it might open itself. Sam brought the coffee, miraculously still warm, and we sat on the couch, and I felt the decision forming in my chest like weather. You don't have to open it now, Sam said, or ever. You could just keep it closed. I could. Could shove it in a closet and pretend it didn't exist. Could throw it away unopened. Could donate it to Goodwill and let it be someone else's mystery. But I'd spent 34 years in my mother's locked rooms, closed doors, silences that had shapes but no names. I was done inheriting locks. I knelt on the floor. Sam sat beside me, close enough that I could feel their warmth, but not so close I'd feel trapped. My fingers found the latch, brass, tarnished, cold. It wasn't locked. Why would it be? The lock had never been the point. The point was making sure I knew I wasn't allowed to look. I lifted the lid. Inside, stacks of letters, rubber banded by year. Envelopes yellowed at the edges, Addresses written in handwriting I didn't recognize but somehow knew. Birthday cards still in their envelopes, never opened. A checkbook register, the old-fashioned kind with carbon copies, and underneath it all, a journal bound in cracked leather, my mother's handwriting on the first page. I picked up the top stack of letters. The return address said David Reeves and an address in Michigan I'd never seen. The postmark, December 1997. I would have been 6. My hands were shaking. Sam's hand found my back, steady pressure between my shoulder blades. I pulled the first letter from its envelope, unfolded it, and started to read. The first letter was dated December 10th, 1997. My father's handwriting slanted right. Loops generous, the kind of penmanship they don't teach anymore. Dear Nora, it started. I hope this finds you well. I think about you every day. Did you lose that front tooth yet? I remember you wiggling it at Thanksgiving, so proud of how loose it was. I had lost it. 2 days before Christmas, put it under my pillow, and got $2 from the tooth fairy. My mother, creeping into my room at midnight. I'd never known my father had asked about it. Had never known he was asking about anything. I read 5 letters before I had to stop, my vision blurring. Sam handed me tissues without a word. The letters marched chronologically through my childhood like a documentary I wasn't in. Questions about school plays I'd been in. References to report cards he must have requested and received. Mentions of birthday gifts he'd sent that I never got. A bike when I turned 8, art supplies when I was 10, and told him I wanted to be an illustrator, a camera for my 13th birthday. She kept them all, I said. My voice sounded strange, distant. Every single one. Never answered, never told me. Sam picked up one of the envelopes, examined the postmark. How many are there? I looked at the stacks, counted rubber bands. Dozens, maybe 100. By 2003, the tone of the letters had changed. Still loving, but desperate now. Please, one said. I just want to know she's okay. I'll settle for a photo, 1 visit a year. Anything. He begged for visitation, begged for phone calls, sent his number a dozen times, underlined, circled. Call any time, day or night. I'm here. I spread them across the floor, a timeline of abandonment that wasn't abandonment at all. A whole relationship that had existed in parallel to my life, invisible, kept from me like a secret that would ruin everything. And maybe it would have. Maybe if I'd known my father was writing, was asking, was trying, I would have questioned my mother's version of events. Would have asked why we never saw him. Would have cracked the story she'd built, the one where she was the hero and he was the villain and I was the prize they'd fought over and she'd won. The birthday cards were worse somehow. Store-bought sentiment signed love, Dad in that same slanting script. Cards for ages I remembered, birthdays spent thinking he'd forgotten. My mother had made cakes, sung to me, given me presents wrapped in careful paper, had let me blow out candles and make wishes while my father's card sat unopened in a box in the attic, archived evidence of her control. Jesus, Sam whispered, reading over my shoulder. She just kept them, like trophies? I picked up the checkbook register. It was old, the kind with carbon copy pages that left blue smudges on your fingers. The first entry was dated January 1997, a month after he'd left. Child support, Nora, $500. Every month, the same entry. $500 to an account number I didn't recognize. I flipped through pages. 1997, 1998, 1999. The amounts increased when I hit high school, $700. Then, in 2005, when I would have been college age, $1,000 monthly. The last entry was November 2013. I would have been 24. Working at the newspaper, finally, after 8 years of night classes and debt. He died 3 months later. Heart attack. I'd found out from an obituary someone forwarded me, asking if I was related. My mother had made sympathetic noises and said it was sad when people died alone. He was paying, I said. My throat felt tight. The whole time. Every month. Where did the money go? I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, and logged into my bank. Searched for accounts in my name. Found 2, checking and savings. Both opened in 2024, nothing older. I tried my social security number, my mother's name as account holder. Nothing. Sam was already on their laptop. What bank did your mom use? First National. Why? Their fingers flew over keys. If she opened an account in your name when you were a minor, she would have had full access, could have just sat on it. For how long? However long she wanted. Sam turned the screen toward me. Until you were 18, she had total control. After that, it gets murky. If you didn't know the account existed, you couldn't access it. And if she was the only one receiving statements. The room tilted slightly. I pressed my palms against the floor to steady myself. 18 years of child support. $500 to $1,000 monthly. I did rough math in my head, didn't trust it, did it again. Somewhere between $60,000 and $80,000 probably. Growing interest, sitting untouched while I worked overnight shifts at a gas station, rationing ramen, choosing between textbooks and groceries. She told me the college fund was gone, I said. Sat across from me at the kitchen table and cried about having to spend it to save the house after the divorce. She cried, Sam. Made me comfort her about it. Sam's hand found mine, laced our fingers together. Didn't say anything because there was nothing to say. I picked up the journal last. My mother's handwriting, tight and controlled across the first page. I did what I had to do to keep her. The entries started in 1996, right after the divorce. Detailed accounts of my father's attempts at contact, each one recorded like evidence. David called again, hung up. He doesn't get to have access whenever he wants. And later, another letter. I'll keep it with the others. Proof of his guilt when she asks. But I hadn't asked. Or I had, once, when I was 8, and she told me he didn't want to see me anymore. Had moved on. Started a new family. I'd believed her because why wouldn't I? She was my mother, and he was gone. The journal entries walked the line between justification and confession. Protecting her from disappointment, she wrote. He didn't deserve access after what he did. What he did, apparently, was fall out of love with her. Leave. Choose happiness over obligation. The unforgivable sin. One entry, dated 2001. Nora asked about her father today. I told her he sends birthday cards sometimes, but always forgets to mail them. She looked so sad. But better she learns now that men are unreliable. I'm teaching her self-sufficiency. Another from 2005. Northwestern. She got in. The scholarship won't cover everything. David's money would help, but if I give it to her, she'll ask questions. She'll find out. Better she learns to work for things. Character building. I read through tears that kept coming, kept blurring the words. Sam sat beside me, solid and warm, reading along in silence. My mother had documented her own abuse like it was parenting. Had convinced herself that isolation was protection, that lies were love, that keeping me from my father was an act of devotion instead of revenge. She really believed it, I said, that she was saving me. That doesn't make it okay. I know. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. But it explains the funeral, why she left me the chest. She thought, what? That I'd read this and understand? That I'd forgive her? Sam shook their head slowly. Maybe she wanted you to know the truth. Finally. Or she wanted the last word. I closed the journal, set it aside. Either way, she got it. We sat there as the afternoon light shifted, casting long shadows across the letters spread between us. Evidence of a love I'd never known existed. Proof of a father who'd tried. Documentation of a mother who'd chosen her pain over my wholeness and called it sacrifice. Sam asked the question eventually, the one I'd been circling. Are you going to tell Claire? I imagined it. Walking into her new house, our mother's house, and laying it all out. The letters, the money, the journal entries. Watching her face as the saint narrative crumbled. She'd defend Mom at first, make excuses. But the evidence was here, undeniable. She'd have to see it. And then what? We'd both be orphans to different versions of the same woman, both grieving mothers who never existed. The satisfaction would last maybe 5 minutes, and then I'd just be carrying my mother's fire forward, letting her poison outlive her. No, I said, I don't think I am. You sure? I picked up my phone, opened messages, scrolled to Claire's name. Typed, hope the house sale goes smoothly. I'm okay, take care. Sent it before I could overthink. Watched the delivered receipt appear. Set the phone down. Yeah, I said, I'm sure. Sam pulled me close, and I let myself fold into them, breathing in the smell of home and safety and a present that didn't belong to my mother. We sat like that while the light faded, surrounded by ghosts and paper and the truth that had been locked away like something dangerous. Later, after we'd ordered Thai food neither of us ate, after Sam had gone to bed and left me alone with my thoughts, I Googled my father's name. David Reeves, added Michigan and obituary. Found it on the third try. March 2014. David Michael Reeves, 54, of Ann Arbor, passed away peacefully at home following a sudden heart attack. He is survived by his loving wife, Patricia, stepchildren Marcus and Jenna, and countless students whose lives he touched during his 30 years teaching art at Pioneer High School. David was known for his terrible puns, his passion for National Geographic, and his unwavering belief that everyone has an artist inside them. In lieu of flowers, donations may be made to the Ann Arbor Arts Education Fund. I read it 3 times. Looked at the photo, him in a classroom, paint-stained apron, laughing at something off camera. He looked happy, looked like someone I might have liked to know. Survived by stepchildren. No mention of me. Why would there be? His daughter had disappeared when she was 6, vanished into her mother's silence. He died not knowing if I remembered him, if I hated him, if I knew he'd tried. I'm sorry, I whispered to the photo, to the father I'd had and lost and never knew was looking for me. I didn't know. The screen blurred. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark living room, listening to Sam's breathing from the bedroom, feeling the weight of all the years I couldn't get back settling around my shoulders like a coat I'd forgotten I was wearing. Tomorrow, I'd figure out what to do with the money. Tomorrow, I'd decide whether to reach out to Patricia, introduce myself, explain. Tomorrow. Tonight, I just sat with the loss. Let myself grieve the father I'd had all along, the one my mother had locked away. Let myself be angry at her finally without guilt. Let myself feel it all, the love and rage and sorrow and bitter, jagged relief that at least now I knew. At least now I knew. The bank manager's name was Gloria, and she had the patient expression of someone who'd heard every strange financial story there was. I sat across from her desk 3 days later, checkbook register in hand, explaining that I was looking for an account that might exist, that might have my name on it, that I'd never known about. When would it have been opened? Gloria asked, fingers poised over her keyboard. Sometime in early 1997, before January. She typed, waited, frowned. Typed again. I see. And you said your mother would have been the custodian? Yes. Eleanor Reeves. She died last week. Gloria's expression softened. I'm sorry for your loss. She studied her screen. I do show an account here. Savings. Opened March 1996 in your name with Eleanor Reeves as custodian. She paused. It was never converted to a standard adult account when you turned 18. Meaning my mother kept control. Technically, you both would have had access once you reached majority. But if you didn't know it existed? She trailed off diplomatically. How much is in it? Gloria pulled up another screen, clicked through several pages, went very still. Including accumulated interest over 29 years, $31,417. The number hung in the air between us. I thought about my student loans, finally paid off 2 years ago, thought about the studio apartment I'd lived in during grad school, where the heat didn't work and I'd slept in my coat. Thought about my mother at the funeral, all those people telling me how much she'd sacrificed. Can I access it? My voice came out steadier than I felt. You'll need to provide identification and proof of relationship to the original custodian. Death certificate, probably. But yes, it's your account. I left the bank with paperwork and a strange lightness in my chest. The money wasn't the point, though it would be nice to finally have savings, to not live paycheck to paycheck. The point was that my father had sent it, had kept sending it, had never stopped trying to take care of me even when I disappeared into my mother's silence. That night, I split the money. $15,000 to the Ann Arbor Arts Education Fund, with instructions to establish a small annual scholarship in David Reeves's name for students who wanted to pursue art despite financial barriers. The form asked for a memorial message. I wrote, "For my father, who never stopped believing everyone has an artist inside them. I'm sorry I didn't get to know you. I wish I had. The rest I kept. Not as inheritance, but as correction, a rebalancing. My father's child support, 29 years late, finally landing where he'd meant it to go. I thought about calling Patricia, drafted an email 3 different times. Dear Patricia, you don't know me, but I'm David's daughter from his first marriage. I just found out he tried to stay in contact. I wanted you to know that he was a good father, even when he couldn't be present. That I wish I'd known him. That I'm sorry. Saved it in drafts. Maybe I'd send it. Maybe I wouldn't. The choice itself was the point, that I could decide that it was mine to make, that my mother's silence didn't have to be mine. I bought a new box for the letters. Simple pine, nothing like the cedar chest. Placed my father's letters inside carefully, the cards, the checkbook register, kept the journal separate. I didn't need to carry my mother's justifications around. Didn't need to preserve her version of events. Her words could stay in the attic of the house Claire was selling, archived with all the other things that didn't belong to me. Sam found me in the closet a week later, arranging the pine box on the top shelf. You okay? They asked. Yeah. I stepped down from the chair. I am, actually. We'd been having versions of this conversation all week. Sam checking in, me discovering I meant it when I said I was fine. It wasn't the numb fine of survival or the forced fine of people-pleasing. It was the simple, clear fine of someone who'd finally set down a weight they'd been carrying so long they'd forgotten it was there. Want to get dinner? Sam asked, in that Thai place you like? The one with the good drunken noodles? That's the one. We were halfway out the door when I remembered I needed my wallet. Ducked back into the bedroom, grabbed it from the dresser, caught my reflection in the mirror and stopped. Really looked. I was smiling. Not the careful smile I'd learned. Growing up, the one that asked permission. Not the tight smile of someone performing okayness, just smiling. Because I wanted Thai food and I had someone who loved me enough to remember which restaurant I liked, and I was free to walk out my door without wondering who I'd disappointed. At the restaurant, Sam asked what I was thinking about. I told them freedom, what it actually meant. It's not forgetting, I said, twirling noodles around my fork. Or forgiving necessarily, it's just refusing to be haunted. Sam reached across the table, squeezed my hand. You're allowed to smile now, you know that, right? I looked down at our joined hands, looked back up at their face, open, patient here. Yeah, I said. I'm starting to figure that out. The following Saturday, I ran into Mrs. Kowalski in the produce section at Whole Foods. She'd lived next door to my mother for 30 years, had brought over casseroles after the funeral, had probably heard about my comment from Aunt Diane within hours. Nora. She materialized beside the apples, all concern and pointed sweetness. How are you, dear? I heard about, well, that comment you made. At the funeral. Her eyebrows climbed toward her hairline. Are you really doing okay? I picked up a Honeycrisp, examined it for bruises, turned it over in my hand, thought about all the ways I could answer, all the explanations I could offer, all the justifications. I'm free, I said, meeting her eyes. So, yes, really. She opened her mouth, closed it, rearranged her face into something that might have been sympathy or might have been judgment. Hard to tell. Didn't matter. Well, she said finally, if you need anything, I know where to find you. I smiled, genuine, easy, and put the apple in my basket. She retreated toward the bananas, glancing back twice like I might do something unpredictable. Let her look. I had apples to buy and a life to live and exactly zero interest in performing grief to make other people comfortable. The next weekend, Sam and I went vintage shopping. Not looking for anything in particular, just wandering through a warehouse of other people's discarded treasures. I found it in the housewares section, tucked between a set of mismatched teacups and a lamp shaped like a pineapple, a ceramic bluebird. Smaller than my mother's collection, brighter blue, cobalt instead of dusty azure. And the wings weren't folded in that closed, careful pose. They were angled up, mid-flight, like the bird had been caught in the moment of takeoff. You collecting birds now? Sam asked, grinning. I turned it over, checked for cracks, found none. Just this one. It cost $3. I carried it home wrapped in newspaper, set it on our mantel where the afternoon light caught it through the window. Stood back and looked at it. Thought about my mother's 47 identical birds, all wings folded, all heads cocked at the same submissive angle. Thought about the one I'd broken at 8, the 3 days of silence that followed. This one was mine. Only mine. And if it fell, when it fell, because nothing lasts forever, I'd sweep it up without apology and buy another. Maybe one with different wings, Maybe one that didn't look like a bird at all. The point was the choosing. The point was that I could. Sam came up behind me, wrapped their arms around my waist, chin on my shoulder. "It's perfect," they said. "It's just a bird." "No." They squeezed gently. "It's not." I leaned back into them, both of us looking at this small blue thing on the mantel, this $3 piece of glazed ceramic that meant absolutely nothing and meant everything. Outside, traffic hummed. Someone laughed on the street. The world continued its forward motion, indifferent to my small revolutions. Inside, I stood in my own apartment with my own person looking at my own bird, and I felt it again. That weightlessness. That clarity. The particular freedom of being haunted by nothing, beholden to no one, carrying only what I chose to carry. I thought about the funeral, about Aunt Diane's horrified face, about Claire's tears, about all those people who'd wanted me to perform the right kind of grief, about my mother in her casket, hands folded, finally still, and I smiled. Not for her, not against her, just because I was here and she wasn't, and I was finally impossibly completely free. The bluebird caught the light, wings angled upward, frozen mid-flight, but somehow still moving. Still going. Still becoming something other than what it had been. I understood the feeling.